getting close to spooky season, Sherry. Almost time for me to watch all my cheesy, corny horror movies. The month of October is one of the best that there is. And what a great time leading into October for us to talk about fear. Fear, which I believe is the only emotion that there is. That sounds crazy, doesn't it?
It is.
I know you're not fully bought in.
I'm not bought in.
I'm going to keep working you over.
No, you don't have to work me over. I can have my own opinion.
You can.
Yeah.
And express it well, too. You definitely have your own opinion. But so here's mine. Fear is the only emotion. When we talk about emotional maturity and gaining emotional maturity and doing the work of emotional maturity, something I had to do a lot of, well into my adulthood, didn't come naturally to me. We talk about learning to accept the waves of emotions that roll over us, learning to understand that whatever emotion we're feeling in the moment, even if it's an uncomfortable one, this too will pass and something else will replace it. And while I think all of that's important and correct, I think it complicates the issue, for me anyway, more than it needs to. I believe that there is only one emotion, and it's fear. And on the one end of the spectrum of fear, you have debilitating, lockdown fear where like you can't leave the house and you're just completely terrified. And on the other end, you've got complete lack of fear, total freedom from fear. I've heard a number of people when I've described this theory, they have countered that lack of fear is love. I can kind of buy into that. But whether you call it love or just lack of fear, most of us spend most of our time in the middle on that continuum, being impacted by fear in a variety of ways. And so these emotions that we feel washing over us, they're really just manifestations of fear. So let's talk about how fear impacts relationships, and then specifically about our relationship. I would argue that fear stifles vulnerability. It prevents people from being open and honest, and it crushes communication. And I think when you think about relationships that have challenges, which most of them do, right? The experts will say that the vast majority of the problems in relationships connect directly to communication. So when we're afraid in our relationship, and we're not able to be vulnerable and honest, and we can't communicate very well, it's just like a recipe for disaster. Now, I know we've had lots of times in our relationship where you felt that fear and you weren't vulnerable and you didn't want to be open and you didn't want to communicate. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there were lots of times where I was worried and I guess fearful of your reaction about things, or the way you would perceive something if I was to bring it to you. You often and always have been very vocal about your feelings and your emotions, and you verbalize a lot of like your, I don't know, displeasure or opinions. So bringing things to you that may have been a financial burden or something that I knew that you wouldn't necessarily find rational in your mind, when you were drinking, and even if you were like sober but in your drinking days, I didn't know how you would respond or react. So there was a lot of fear because of the instability and the inconsistency that was there.
You've talked a lot about how you're a stuffer. Rather than deal with your emotions when you can get away with it, you just stuff it down and hope it goes away, and then eventually you've stuffed so much that it explodes. Do you think that the fear that you felt in the relationship was that just a recipe, made in heaven or hell, or however you want to say that, for someone who likes to stuff? Like you're afraid to bring stuff to me, and you have justification for that because I've reacted poorly in the past. So stuff away. Did it lead to more stuffing?
I suppose it would, but I think even if it wasn't an overtly negative reaction, I probably would have still continued to evade the conversations that needed to happen. So, I mean, I don't know. I can't say because I haven't been there, but I'm sure that it played into it a bit.
Yeah, I think so.
A bit more. Yeah, I mean, I just think also because of the stuffing, it took a lot of like kind of getting out of like that negative self-esteem piece and feeling confident and secure, even outside of the relationship. I probably felt like I didn't want to ruffle feathers and speak my mind outside of the relationship with other people just because I didn't want more like negative reactions or chaos or something. So
Sounds like more fear, more to be afraid of. Another thing that fear does in relationships is it leads to self-medication and isolation. I can't tell you how many people that we've met that are in a committed partnership, most of them in a marriage, and they talk about how lonely they are in marriage, more lonely than they were when they were single. Did you feel that way when you and I just weren't connecting at all and our communication was terrible and you were stuffing and afraid? Did you feel lonely?
I don't. I mean, we did have we did have 4 kids, so I think I was not
Is that to
aware of
indicate
any.
that we still had sex even?
Well, I'm just saying, like, I think the relationship had to kind of had some trouble from the beginning, and it wasn't really like working it out. So by the time we had our first child, there was like the distraction and the focus on the kids, and then we bought a business, so it was just I was more distracted. So I don't really know if I felt
Yeah.
lonely. Also, I got to be honest, I didn't really enjoy your company kind of early on because of your
Makes you
behaviors.
wonder why you married me,
I
doesn't
know,
it?
or continue to stay married or had kids with you.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times I enjoyed your company, but there were a lot of times where I didn't want to be around you. So, because, like your opinion of, oh, everybody drinks like these 2
Yeah.
really strong cocktails every night. Yeah. So I kind of feel like I was able to kind of keep company and distracted.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I mean, there were times.
That's where you brought in the 4 kids. You had a lot going on. You had a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah. So I didn't.
You didn't have time to feel lonely.
Yeah. I didn't have a lot of time to feel lonely.
Yeah.
And also, you were kind of an early workaholic, too.
And I noticed when you said that you didn't like to be around me, didn't enjoy my company, I think was your.
Yeah.
You used past tense. Do you still feel that way?
Well, I used past tense because I didn't like to, but now I enjoy your company.
Okay. Look, hey,
You just need some reassurance.
I'm an external validation, like glommy sucker, and I'm just looking for a little bit of. I mean, you're sitting here, so.
Yeah, and I mean, you were a workaholic back in the early days too, so.
I had all the attractive traits.
Yeah, well, I mean, you were a good provider in a lot of ways.
Thanks. I'll take that as a compliment. The key to getting out of this stuck state of fear, stifling vulnerability, crushing communication, and leading to self-medication and a feeling of isolation, the key is an emotionally safe environment. I think many of our viewers live in a physically safe environment, but a very emotionally unstable and unsafe environment. And so we had to learn what that meant. It means not ranting and raving. Even when I'm not ranting and raving at you, I'm mad about something else and I'm hooting and hollering about it. It just creates tension and anxiety in the household. Not dropping the hammer on our kids, creating a household that is safe and that they feel nurtured in, as opposed, they're going out in the big bad world and facing all adversity. It should be comfortable within these 4 walls. And so creating that emotionally safe environment, it's just absolutely key. And it's a piece that a lot of us are missing in our relationships and in our lives. Is love the opposite of fear? Is that the other emotion? I could buy into that. So making love our target is really the key. I'm glad to hear that you are no longer, hating being around me, and you feel less fearful sitting next to me. With this cold you've got, I'm a little afraid to sit here.
I would be.
So let's call it good.
Okay.
If you'd like to hear more of our opinionated ramblings, please check out the Untoxicated podcast.
Or if you like to read and you would like to know more about what we talk about in written form, please go to soberandunashamed.com.
If you're picking up what we're laying down, you might be ready to find your tribe. Please check out shoutsobriety.org or echoesofrecovery.org. We know what you're going through. You've got this, and we've got you.